Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you listen to this special episode of Treaty Talk as we look forward to this Sunday's All Ireland Senior Hurling Final between Limerick and Kilkenny. As always, I'm joined by Matt O'Callaghan of the Weekly Observer Vale Star. We'll have two special guests after the intro, and a huge thank you, as always, to our sponsors, Noel's Menswear, as we look forward to another epic game this Sunday.
The impression the game you get out of it, what you put into it's like a walk of life. If you're good enough, go out and get it, no more about it.
Not so much control in the centre of the field from Kilkenny as Richie Bennett sends it high and over the bar.
Your mother sends you down to the shop for a pound's worth of goods and she gives you 50 pence. You can't get the pound's worth of goods, can you?
Just about kept in. Oh, well, Shawty Buckley. To do that to Tomás O'Shea, he deserves to score from here. One of the highlights of the Sunday game.
Limerick went out there from the word go today. No more about it. They made all the running, that was it. Put the ball over the bar and the back of it, and that's it. No ifs, no buts.
Is there much time left? We have a couple of injuries. Here comes Kieran Carey. Carey leading the charge of the right brigade. 45 metres out. He's a chance to score. He's put it hard.
There's no sympathy in this game for anybody.
No, absolutely delighted and privileged to be joined firstly by Nickey Brennan, former Kilkenny hurler, Limerick hurling GAA President, and also Joe Quaid, former Limerick hurler. Nickey, coming to you first, I suppose, same as 12 months ago, Derek Lyng's first year, you'd be very happy to be back in that Ireland final, but Kilkenny don't get the finals just to make up the numbers. You'll be looking to end what is a famine-free.
No, there's no doubt about it. It has been, by our terms, it's a famine since 2015. Look, when Brian Cody decided to step down, I suppose it was always going to be a poison chalice for somebody. And there was always the possibility whoever was coming in, might make wholesale changes. Now, the easiest transition was somebody like Derek Lyng. And he had the advantage of winning an under-20 All-Ireland last year, which was probably not fully expected, to be quite frank about it. To win that, obviously, put him in the driving seat once Brian decided to step down. He had been working with Brian for a number of years as a selector as well, so he was familiar with the inter-county scene. I think it would have been Brian's wishes, as well, that he would have gone on to the 20s and get some experience in the managerial capacity. So I think he's done very well. The league getting to the final was good. The league final result was a chastening experience for Kilkenny. They were well out-hurled by Limerick, to be fair, that day. But I'd say Derek was still in the throes of trying to find his feet there with his players and with his backroom team. He's done very well. Yes, we were lucky to win the Leinster final. There's no point in saying it any other ways. But to get to the final is very good, and there's a good determination there to do very well on Sunday. They won't be favourites, but Kilkenny will always go into an All Ireland final feeling they're never without a chance in an All Ireland final.
Yeah, and Joe, it's something that we're getting used to here in Limerick, but it's still a unique event to be in All Ireland final. Obviously, you played in two, but for this group to be in their fifth in 6 years, you'd have to pinch yourself almost.
Yeah, I suppose, look, there's one thing in Limerick, even though with the recent success, the bad days are still far from our minds. And I suppose in our day when we were hurling there, Croke Park was our graveyard. Whereas for this bunch of lads, it seems to be their playground. So I think they expect to get there every year when they put on the boots in probably November, out in the muck and shite, training and putting in the hard yards. I think they've only one goal in mind, and that is to win the All-Ireland, not even get to it. They're a super bunch of lads, but there's always one rule. I'm not a betting man, but if I was a betting man, I would have one rule: don't ever back against Kerry in the All-Ireland football final, and don't ever back against Kilkenny in the All-Ireland hurling final.
Yeah, I think we've been scared enough before. Matt, what's your take in the build-up to the game? Are you looking forward to it? Nervous energy, all that?
Oh yeah, definitely nervous energy. There's no doubt at all about that. Especially when the opponents are Kilkenny, because we've seen over the years, the level of dominance. Like Kilkenny have been champions 36 times, and it is for a reason. And yes, they had a very particularly prosperous time during Brian Cody's reign. But like the seeds with what Nickey said there about Derek Lyng, because we have seen in other sports, if you have, a manager that works wonders and, has longevity in the job, and when they step down, there's a desperate, kind of sort of a problem. There's a long settling in period, successes, and very many of the successes don't succeed at all. But by any benchmark, you'd have to say that Derek Lyng has been a spectacular success, because they reached the league final. Yes, they were well overturned by Limerick in the league final. They won the Leinster final, albeit with a late goal by Cillian Buckley. But to me, that tells me that the work that Derek Lyng and his management team did on the Kilkenny team since the league final, and the steel and resolve that they instilled in them, like going 2 points down, you're 2 points down deep in, and you just keep going, and it paid dividends with Cillian. And similar, I suppose, when Clare came at him in the semi-final, I thought Kilkenny showed great resilience again, because like the only resemblance to Clare in the second half from the first half was the colour of the jerseys, because the type of performance, the intensity that they put in the second half was simply phenomenal.
Yeah, it was a brilliant performance, I think, from Kilkenny. Listen there to the lads, Nicky. What kind of, the aura around Kilkenny and what they've done over the years, and obviously during your presidency, they were the kingpins, and Limerick kind of similar to that. But will that count for anything, that, aura that Kilkenny still have, that when they are in a final, they're such a dangerous animal? Even though Limerick are going for 4 in a row, you still have to be extremely wary of the Cats.
Well, it's not going to matter what Kilkenny done back in the Brian Cody era, to be honest about it. But having said that, I mean, obviously the will to win and the whole way Kilkenny approached the game, that is pretty similar. I mean, you will see a mighty effort from Kilkenny on Sunday. Whether it's good enough or not, we won't know till whatever it is, 5 o'clock or so on Sunday. But Kilkenny will absolutely go into this match feeling that they can win the game, and they feel that they will. I mean, bear in mind, 12 months ago, there was only 2 points in it. And, I would always say if Colin Fennelly had been available for Kilkenny last year, had he played last year, it could have had a bearing on the result, because he was a sort of a big guy who could hold up the ball in the full backline and not be kind of pushed away, and maybe make more space for the likes of TJ Reid. But that's a big if, and there's no point in talking about ifs at this stage. So Kilkenny are not going to be easily beaten. But having said that, there's all of the players are going to have to play up. Some of them have been playing very well this year and being the star performers. But we're going to need to get a lot more from the players. And Derek, of course, I'm sure himself and his backroom team have been pondering how to manage the way Limerick approach their game out of defence, the way the ball is delivered into Casey's corner, into Gallan's corner, into Flanagan's right in front of him. Because if you have the ball being delivered in, and the players get going to the ball or getting it at pace in front of them and all that, it makes it extraordinarily difficult for any full back line to try and cope with that. So these are the sort of things I'm sure that will have occupied the minds of the Kilkenny selectors over the last while, since they knew they were playing Limerick. And I'm sure they will have a plan to counteract that, but that's not going to be easy, because Limerick are very, very good at the way they move the ball at pace to the attacking player. And it's always in an attacking player who's gone out to midfield. And the player who's probably been one of the standout players for in my view, for Limerick this year has been O'Donovan at midfield. He's been orchestrating an awful lot of what's been happening there. And you're going to possibly see O'Donoghue at full back or centre back if Declan Hanlon can't make it. But Darragh Donovan has been a very influential player for Limerick this year, and he's been the conductor of the orchestra, in my view, around the middle of the field. And Kilkenny were going to have to decide who's going to pick him up, because he pops out to the wing and he's given an opportunity to a defender, a half-back or a full-back, whoever it might be, to get that ball and set up another attack. And these are the things that Kilkenny are going to have to be very, very conscious of on Sunday.
Yeah, I think Dara has his all-star in the bag. But Joe, were you surprised to see that it was Will that was the man that went back to centre-back? And, we know Keane can play midfield, but I did think it was a bit of a surprise. And how did you think Will fared at 6?
Yeah, look, to be fair, I think the team in general, if he had put Seamus Flanagan back there, it wouldn't have surprised me, because they seem to be able to convert players from forwards to backs, backs to forwards. Like, you've got O'Hegarty started out as a back. He's now up in the forwards. Barry Nash was a forward. Sean Finn probably started his career as a forward, so I think it's just the way the team is so interchangeable at the moment. Nothing would surprise me who'd go back in there because, to be fair, I had heard rumours that David Reedy was being looked at back there as well. So with the guys, I guarantee you nothing is done on a whim. Everything is well planned. Yes, it took time for Will to probably settle back there, but what I thought was absolutely brilliant was both John and Dara's interviews after, especially when they hadn't met, whether it's media training or it's just the way they think. There were carbon copy interviews that, look, it took a bit of time, our work rate wasn't good. It took us time to settle in. We had to figure it out. It seemed like a kind of a thing that they decided, right, lads, here's the ball for Galway. You've 20-25 minutes to show us what you're about. You better be 10-12 points up, because if you're not, we're going to take the ball back off you then. Once we've figured out, we're going to impose our game plan, and we're going to give you everything we got. Risky strategy, but I hope to God they don't do it again on Sunday. But look, I know, and Dara Donovan has been pulling the strings, but if you go through any of the podcasts, any of the previews, the reviews of matches even, everybody's on about the matchups. Who'll pick up Hegarty? Who'll pick up Gillane? Who'll pick up Lynch? Nobody has ever turned around and asked the question, who's going to pick up Tom Morrissey? And Tom, on his worst day on the pitch, will hit probably 3 or 4 points from play, and he might, on a bad day, he might hit 4 or 5 wides to go with it. But on a good day, he'll hit 6-7 points. But nobody has ever, in my knowledge anyway, actually said, okay, we need to find someone to man mark Tom Morrissey. And to me, when the chips have been down, he's always been the one that has kept us in games. Yeah, he's been taken off late in the games, but I think that's just down to sheer exhaustion from when others around him aren't going great, that Tom is just the man that keeps the ship steady, keeps the ship afloat. So, yeah, you can have all your plans for the other guys, but you have Tom Morrissey lurking there in the background.
Yeah, Tom has been phenomenal. Nicky, is that kind of the thing with Limerick, that if you do tie down a Gillane and you get to grips with Flanagan and Casey, that they've just so many forwards that can hurt you, the likes of Garrod, obviously he's had the huge games and finals, and Dave Reedy has come into his own, and as Joe mentioned, Tom Morrissey, that you really do have to try and stop all 6 forwards.
Oh yeah, there's no doubt about it. I think, look, when guys have gone through that amount of hurling with that amount of success, there's a confidence about their play, but there's also a real understanding of each other's play. They know one another's play so well, and they know how to back up and support one another. If a Gillane moves out of one space, out of one area, someone else might pop into that space. That's all something that comes with experience of playing with one another. So I think Kilkenny are under no illusion. Kilkenny have some tough calls to make here now. I mean, Paddy Deegan played on Garrod Hegarty last year, and it didn't go too well. Now, right now, as we would see the team being placed, they could very well be facing up to one another. You have David Blanchfield on the right-hand side, who was actually having a very good year, but he picked up a nasty injury against Clare and is very doubtful to play on Sunday. Possibly Pádraig Walsh will come in there, and that wouldn't lessen the scene an awful lot, to be honest about it. Killian Buckley, the fact that he's getting married on Saturday might knock him out for a starting place, but the fact that he could still come on, might mean a lot. But you could see Pádraig Walsh at right half back, but they have a bit of juggling. You could even see Pádraig Walsh at left half back and maybe Paddy Deegan at right half back, simply because facing Deegan against Hegarty one year after the other, when things didn't go too well last year, they have to think about that, the selectors as well. But you're right, all 6 Limerick forwards are all capable of inflicting a lot of pain on Kilkenny, and that's going to stretch the Kilkenny backs. But generally speaking, the Kilkenny backs have not been performing too badly. It's at the other end of the field, I think, that where we will have to get huge games out of some of the newer lads. Well, Billy Ryan's been there a bit. Tom Phelan, who's living about 3 fields behind me here at the moment, that's where he's from. I mean, it's a big game for him. He's first All-Ireland. I'm assuming he's going to be picked. But it's a big, tall guy who has plenty of pace and plenty of running. But he's going to meet in either Kyle Hayes or Diarmaid Burns. He's going to meet a totally different type of guy who's the physique and everything about them, hurling and everything is just at a significant level above most of what Kilkenny defenders have at the moment. Maybe bar Hugh Lawler and possibly Mikey Butler. But that's the challenge faced Kilkenny. I mean, there are some of the matchups you would say lean heavily in favour of Limerick. But that's the great thing about an All-Ireland final, because it's a one-off game and anything can happen in an All-Ireland final. I mean, both teams should have a strong mental approach. Shouldn't be too worried to them because they get into All-Ireland final. They've been there before. But look, things happen on a day in an All-Ireland final, and they can impact on the way the flow of the game. It could be a weather issue. We've having bad rain lately. You don't know what way if that was to pour in Croke Park, what way it would affect either team. You just don't know. So it's but certainly Kilkenny will be spending a fair bit of time thinking about the matchups and how they're going to manage that. But it's going to be very difficult to win all those matchups, to be honest about it. I just can't see it happening. There will be, Limerick just have so many strong players. I think it'll be a real challenge for Kilkenny to win on the individual battles, because ultimately that's when the All-Irelands are won, who wins the individual battles.
Yeah, definitely. We'll get into the Kilkenny forwards in a minute, Matt. But Matt, just Aaron Donovan and Tom Morris, who were mentioned there, and definitely two of the most unheralded players, maybe underappreciated at times. But the importance of those lads, especially when Limerick weren't going well this year, to kind of put us out of the fire down in Thurles and in the Munster final against Cork as well. That, again, when the bigger name players aren't necessarily firing all cylinders, Limerick can rely on the other fellas to get the job done.
Yeah, sure. Dara has been totally underrated, and in fairness, you have been promoting his cause years. He's been absolutely outstanding this year. And if you take just one little cameo in the All Ireland semi-final when we from Mike Casey and Galway had the opportunity to go 8 or 9 points up, and then the next score was a fantastic score from Darragh O'Donovan, which possibly changed the whole course of that half anyway. But yeah, I agree, and Joe has brought up a very valid point about Tom Morrissey, but he's a very, very hard man to pick up with the amount of ground that he covers, because you can find him back in the half-back line, you can find him supplementing midfield. He moves all over the place, and like a lot of the narrative in the lead up to this final has been about the matchups, particularly in the respective full-back lines, and who will pick up Aaron Gillan, who will pick up Seamus Flanagan, and who will pick up TJ Reid, who will pick up, in particular, Owen Cody. And I suppose you would have to think, you'd have to ask yourself the question, which of the two sides is better equipped to supply going in? And I suppose with the like Morrissey and Darragh O'Donovan, particularly at midfield, and the Limerick half-back line I think is extremely strong, whether we have Declan Hannon or not. I think I've seen in the past, and you've seen in the past, and Joe, you've probably seen William O'Donoghue playing at centre half-back from the Piercing, where he was formidable. Now, he had moved out of that position, and it was a case of readjusting. But having a game under William's belt now will be absolutely fantastic for him, and it will bring him on a show. And if he's on, and if Declan Hannon fails to make it, I think you will see a different Darragh O'Donovan from the start. But Limerick have a very, very strong half-back line, and I think they are more likely to limit the supply going into the like of Owen Cody and the TJ Reeds. There was a forward there that wasn't mentioned, and I think he's a dangerous customer. Martin Keoghan has, he's everything. He knows the goal is.
Yeah, he definitely knows where the goal is. Nicky, goals will be crucial. Obviously, got 2 last year, wasn't enough. Owen Cody's been in spectacular form from the goals, as is Martin Keoghan. Like, is that something that you think Kilkenny will aim for early on, is to try and get a goal and try and rattle Limerick?
Oh yeah, well, why not? I mean, the bottom line, you go for a goal at every opportunity within reason. Now, Matt mentioned about Martin Keoghan. Now, he came back the last day after a hamstring, and my own view is that he was probably very nervous playing. I suppose there was pull the hamstring again, and there was no chance of making an All-Ireland final if you managed to get through the Clare game. So I'd say that was probably preying on his mind. So I think he will have had the extra 2 weeks will have been a big help to him now to get further treatment and to get back sharper. So I'd expect him to be in much better form. He is a dangerous forward. He knows, and he's physically got very strong. The whole S&C work he's done over the last 2 years has really brought him on a huge amount from the time he was playing in colleges hurling and that. So I've seen a huge, I know Martin very well. I meet him regularly, and he's after developing huge upper body strength. So he will be well able to take anything that Dan Morrissey or any of the full backline will be able to throw at him, and he has a very good eye for goal. As you said, has Owen Cody as well. And look, the bottom line is these are the guys I'm talking about. They just need to play up to scratch. I mentioned the backs earlier, but all of these guys are going to have to play up to scratch. It hasn't been a full team performance by any manner of means from Kilkenny yet in the championship. They've had a number of indifferent displays, but if you're playing an All-Ireland final, you need everybody firing well, and you need to take your opportunities, because we know our Kilkenny's opponents. They will do that. It might have taken them time to settle against Galway. But once Galway kind of left the door a little bit open, they just rushed through it, and they ran away with the game then. There was only one team in it in the second half.
Yeah, Joe, you'd see it from the goals. You're up close and personal with these superstars of the game. And Owen Cody is definitely one of them, and TJ is another. But how important is it for the boys out the field to try and stop that good ball coming in? Because we saw Darragh last day, made hay for Limerick with the space he was given, and if you give those boys time, they will cause a lot of damage. That, Mike Casey or Dan, whoever's on Owen Cody, their job will be made so much easier if the boys in the middle thirds can prevent that good ball coming in.
Look, it's the same for both sides, as Nicky said. Like, you get good ball and quick ball into forwards of that caliber on both sides. It doesn't matter whether you have 5 Dan Morrisseys inside there or 5 Hugh Lawlers on the other side. These guys are actually impossible to mark. They're unmarkable if the correct ball comes in from both sides. So the battle is, people will be on about putting cornerbacks in. Is he good enough cornerback? Is he a good enough fullback or whatever? Your fullback line's performances are solely dictated at this level by your middle third players. You could even go back as far as your full forward line, your half forward line, to stop ball coming out, to stop players planting their feet and having a look up. Now, it's one thing that Limerick do very well. A couple of years ago against Waterford in the semi-final, I remember the pressure that the Limerick full forward line and half forward line put on the backs. It was just a case of when Waterford were getting the ball, they were turning and hitting. If we can get Kilkenny doing the same, then I think we're flying it. If we give them time to settle around the field, and if they can plant their feet and look up, the quality inside that Kilkenny have, the quality that they can bring off the bench. I had someone saying to me from Kilkenny, actually, Nicky, he was saying, sure, we're at nothing. Like, if you're dependent on Wally Walsh, if you're dependent on Killian Buckley, if you're dependent on who else came on, Richie Hogan and Paul Walsh. I said, lads, that is yes, they're probably coming to the end of their career, some of them. I said, but look at the experience you're bringing on. Like, you look the last day, Wally was very good when he came on. Richie Hogan, I thought he was actually nearly going backwards when he went over to collect that ball. What happened? He was cute enough to get a free. He contributed, So you have huge experience coming on there as well. So to me, you have to shut down that middle third. Is it something that Kilkenny have been doing? Probably not. But it's something that they will definitely, I would think, be working on this week, because Limerick are masters of the middle third at the moment. And as I said, the quality of ball that goes in. I saw something strange against Galway, that in the second half, Seamus Flanagan was out in the middle third, which we've never seen before. He went on one of his looping runs and was making his way back in. After, but he was actually positioned out there. So look, maybe they're bringing something new to the pot, in that they're rotating a bit and bringing the likes of Seamus out, another big strong man. Like, if you're one of the Kilkenny lads, and if they're going to try maybe even play a running game around the middle to break tackles, and you have the likes of Kyle Hayes, Will O'Donoghue, Dermot Burns, and next minute you have another man mountain and Flanagan in around there to try and get around. It could be a tactic that they might look at using again, but it's that, to me, is going to be the battle of all battles. Yes, ball will go in, and both sides, both sets of full forward lines especially, I can guarantee you we'll get some spectacular scores. I can see a couple of goals each, probably from either team in the game, with the quality that's in there. But the real battle of wits and the endeavour will be in around the middle third. I suppose back in 19, that's where we lost. The first 20 minutes of that game that we could never recover from was the intensity and the work rate and that Kilkenny brought that year. And I said it's Kilkenny. There's no Kilkenny man going to go out and not leave every drop of blood, sweat and tears on the pitch.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned 2019 there, because obviously Kilkenny got the start that day and won by a point. And last year was Limerick after a flying start and won by 2 points. Nickey, there are two teams that are very comfortable with taking the lead and holding it. So, could the game be won and lost in the first 10 minutes, do you think?
I doubt it, but at the same time, I think both teams will be looking to lay down a marker at an early stage, and you do that by maybe grabbing a goal or two and putting some doubt into the mind of your opponents, and maybe have the team and the selector scrambling for answers, because when things start to go wrong, badly wrong in the early stages, maybe your plan B, C and D goes out the window as well, and you have to start thinking. And All-Ireland final day in Croke Park is not the place really where you can't put in your alternative options if things are going so wrong. So I suppose both teams will be hoping to make that better start. But going back to what Joe said there, I absolutely fully concur with him there. I think during the Brian Cody era, one of the attributes that his team had was making sure that forwards were always tackling defenders and not give them an opportunity to clear the ball. Or you wouldn't do it all the time, but you certainly cut down the supply and retain possession up in your attack. I think that's probably something that Kilkenny are not doing as well at the moment, and maybe that just comes with time. Derek has just had a number of months, and given the way the championship is now run in such a condensed period, a manager is not getting as much time with the players as he would normally like, because between games it's a case of resting, to be honest about it. But certainly that aspect of Kilkenny's game is not what it was during the successful period of Brian Cody. In more recent times, obviously since 2015, we haven't been successful. So that's going to be a big factor. And the other thing Joe alluded to there as well is that Kilkenny have quite a lot of experience likely in the subs at this stage. Now, Pádraig Walsh possibly likely to start instead of David Blanchfield. He looks like he's out. There's a possibility maybe that maybe Cillian Buckley could come in there, or even Dara Corcoran. They may even go and say, let's throw in Dara Corcoran, an All-Ireland club medalist with Shamrocks Ballyhale. He won a Fitzgibbon with UL as well, and so he's a huge big guy, and I always felt this year that Corcoran and Blanchfield might very well be the two Kilkenny wing backs in the same mould, not the same experience or as Burns and Kyle Hayes, but there was a lot of similarities about them in terms of physique. Now the two Kilkenny lads have still a long way to go to match the ability of those two Limerick lads, but so you could see Corcoran on board there. But Kilkenny do have a lot of experience in the subs. Yes, they're coming to the end of perhaps the twilight of wonderful careers. But I tell you one thing: when you got 10 or 15 minutes to go, and if you're a Richie Hogan or a Walter Walsh or a Cillian Buckley or whoever it might be, you're more than capable at beyond 30 years of age of giving your all for 20 minutes. That could be very influential in how a game could turn out. So it's the way it's been happening with Kilkenny. Derek has been bringing on 5 or 6 subs, generally the same players going on, generally the same players going off, bar injuries. And I think I don't see it being any different on Sunday. But I think we're fortunate to have so much experience in our bench, and I have no concerns whatsoever about the age that might be in the match programme about these lads.
Yeah, the both benches are stacked. To be fair, you mentioned the lads coming out for Kilkenny there, and then the Limerick side, if it goes the same as the semi-final, you have the likes of Cathal O'Neill, Oisín O'Reilly, Conor Boylan. Unfortunately, Rich English has gone down with a cruciate in the meantime. But Matt, who has the stronger bench, or would you class them as fairly even?
12 months ago, I would definitely have said Limerick, but I was looking at the Kilkenny bench and some of the names that fall out to you, like Walsh, Walter Walsh, Richie Hogan, and the game has gone such now like that. The starting 15 is one thing, but more important probably is the finishing 15 that will see out the game, and that's some experience to have to call on now. There are a couple of young lads there like Timmy Clifford, and we haven't spoken at all about Billy Drennan. Dara Corcoran whether he will get the match field or not. If he does, he'll be on the bench. So that will give you a sense of the strength of the Kilkenny bench. But the Limerick bench has been tried and tested over the years, and there seems to be a rote, as Nickey said there, with Kilkenny, and there seems to be the same rote with Limerick as to who will be coming on. When you see a guy warming up, you can nearly tell who he's coming on for, that sort of thing. So it's part of what John Kiley probably calls the process. But just listening there to the discussion, and we haven't touched at all, and I suppose this is something Joe would be very familiar with as a celebrated member of the Goalkeepers Union. We've two of the finest goalkeepers that has ever graced the game in cousin Nickey and Owen Murphy, and we've seen their impacts, and just a snapshot of their impact. Nickey Quaid, the save from Harnedy in the dying minutes in the 2018 All-Ireland, which probably changed the course of history for Limerick, because had that gone in, maybe Croke Park would continue to be our graveyard. But then we saw the absolutely incredible save from Owen Murphy last Sunday, and Sunday week now, sorry. But Joe was saying there that we might get a couple of goals. You learn a couple of goals with those two lads.
Yeah, Joe, what's your take on the two boys?
Yeah, without a doubt. I laugh actually there, Matt. I was just thinking back to last year, because you actually don't expect Owen Murphy to be beaten anytime, the same way as you don't expect Nickey to be beaten. And when one goes in as being of said Goalkeepers Union, you become overly critical of he should have got to that. That was a handy one. But these guys, I remember last year being at the match, and when Garrod Hegarty, I don't know how he stuck it into the top corner past Owen Murphy. I stood up, and quite an irate Kilkenny woman behind me gave me a little tip of the flag in the back. She says, "Sit down," she said, "I can't see it." I said, "Don't worry about it, missus." I said, "Owen Murphy didn't see it either." I said, "That makes two of you." But yeah, look, the quality, and I suppose they're quite different goalkeepers. Owen Murphy would be far more renowned for the flamboyant, spectacular save, whereas, as I often said, Nickey at times would make you sick that he just makes goalkeeping look so bloody easy, and he rarely has to dive. His positioning is just unbelievable. Like, he kills balls on the hurley into his hand, whereas probably the likes of myself and Owen Murphy, we'd have done 3 somersaults, flicked it around and fist pumped the crowd, whereas Nickey'll have it in his hand, deliver down to Tom Morrissey, and the ball's over the bar. But the one thing I will say is, and it did happen last year, on the short puck outs, I don't think it's something Owen Murphy has mastered yet. Most of his short puck outs go to feet; they don't go to hand. I think probably last year did we gain every 1-2, 1-3 from kind of turnovers from the short puck outs. So hopefully he hasn't been working on them too much this year. But as far as puck outs, I think there's no one to come near Nickey Quaid. He could find space inside in the middle of Spaghetti Junction. He just, I don't know how he does it. Because you've players that are being man-marked, pulled, dragged, everything, and then all of a sudden there's a ball hit out to one of the lads, and he's standing in 40 yards of space. It's baffling how they do it. Obviously, it's just repeat, and they constantly do the training. But the one thing he won't do is he won't give a ball unless it's on. And he doesn't do panic. You look at Owen Murphy against Galway the last day, when the pressure came on, the short puck outs went astray. And that's one thing, thank God, that Nickey doesn't do. He's the orchestra, or the conductor of that orchestra. We probably are starting to take it for granted now, that it's just become so natural to him. And we expect a 9-10 out of 10 performance from him every day. And look, he'll expect that himself. And I know goalkeepers no more than Owen Murphy as well. If a goal passes you, you'll always go home that night and you'll have in your head, should I have stopped it? People might say a goal was unstoppable. The only person that'll really answer the true question of that is the fella that had passed, because he'll know whether he should or shouldn't have got to it. But look, that save that Owen Murphy made was just, it wasn't even to get the hurl at it. It was the action, and if you watch it in slow motion, he actually knew that getting to the hurl at it wouldn't be enough, and the flick of the wrist just to take it. Did he try and put it onto the crossbar? If he did, he's an absolute genius. I'd say he would have been damn happy if he went over the bar. But he's a phenomenal hurler. He's a phenomenal eye for a ball. Is the stuff he does stuff you can practice? Probably his best saves, and from a goalkeeper, your best saves are ones that you know nothing about, that your body just kicked into action, and you stand up after and you go, how in the name of God did I stop that? And I think a lot of Owen Murphy stuff is that way. He has just phenomenal reflexes. He's a phenomenal eye for the ball. You remember going back, Matt, he was at Amgalan, he stopped more balls from back in, that was in 18, wasn't it? He nearly beat, he nearly beat us by himself. We couldn't get the bloody ball past him. So it'll be, Nickey referred to individual battles. They may be either side of the pitch, but that's an individual battle that I think will have a huge bearing. Whoever comes out on top on the puck outs and obviously the shot stopping as a combination, I think that'll go a long way to determining who's going to win this final.
Yeah, Nickey, we spoke lyrical there about the two goalies. I'm sure the people in Kilkenny wouldn't swap Owen Murphy for Nickey Quaid, as would the Limerick people wouldn't swap Nickey Quaid for Owen Murphy. You just couldn't separate them.
Oh, I think that's a fair point. I mean, they're just being extraordinary goalkeepers, and both counties are fortunate to have goalkeepers of that caliber. And the funny thing about it is that the team that is the most dominant on Sunday, it's the opposite goalie is likely to be the one who will have to shine the most. So often it is, of all the players on the field who can come out of this, the best in terms of an individual performance, it can be the goalie on the potentially the goalie on the losing team. So it's a negative way of looking at it, to be honest about it. But the other thing is worth mentioning as well is the Kilkenny club competitions kick into action 2 weeks from Sunday, and Owen Murphy will line out at number 6 for his club, Glenmore. And as it happens, the sub goalie also, Darren Brennan, will line out for his club somewhere in the half-hour line as well. So ironically, we have the two goalies that will line out for Kilkenny, number 1 and number 16 on Sunday, are both outfield players for their club team. So it's not unusual, but it's you'd often wonder how easy is it then. Maybe I don't know. Nickey Quaid, does he play out the field with his club or whatever?
Yeah, centre back as well.
Centre back as well. Well, there you have it. And you can, in fairness to both of those players, it cannot be that easy then to adjust. It can take a little bit of time to adjust to the play within the goal, because your reflexes maybe have to be recalibrated again when you get back to playing in goal. So, and maybe on that basis alone, both of them as number 6 for their clubs deserve enormous credit that they can turn around and wear number 1 for their counties and be up at the top of the pile.
Yeah. I have always said, Jack, that, and you get lambasted for saying it as a goalkeeper, but I always said your best hurler should be in goals. And you know, people talk about out the field working on your first touch. Goalies can't work on their first touch. They have to work on their touch because they've only one. You don't have a second go at it. So there's no point working on your first touch. You have to work on your touch. So I've always said it. And look, when I had a gang of them lads under 14 to under 16, under 14, Tom Morrissey was in goals. Under 15, Barry Nash was in goals. Under 16, Colin Ryan was in goals. So it's either saying a few things. One, that these guys were the best hurlers on the panel at the time, or number 2, I know nothing about outfield hurlers or goalkeepers.
But it does show how influential goalies have become over the last couple of years. Funny enough, in both hurling and Gaelic football. I mean, in last Sunday in Croke Park, I was up there, and to see the Derry goalie and Shane Ryan, the Kerry goalie, they spent an awful lot of time around the middle of the field. Now, I think with the pace of the hurling game, I don't think that would be a wise choice for goalkeepers in hurling to make the field, because a shot from 60 yards could go into the goal and nobody minding it. But they are becoming influential in terms of their puck outs and their whole strategy and how they engage with the defenders around them. Because at the end of the day, and Joe knows this better than any of us, that a goalkeeper can see everything that's happening on the field. And he's best positioned maybe to direct those in front of him as well in terms of movement out the field, or in terms of markups, or in terms of whatever it might be. So a goalie is a very influential player on the field from that point of view. And they apart from concentrating on their own game, they're able to very much see what's happening around them and alert the team to the potential dangers that might be there.
Yeah, 100%. Because when you factor in scores and wides, the goalie these days is probably getting the ball 50 to 60 times in their hand. And, that could be that amount of tax like this. Nickey definitely, I think, shades that area that, as you said, Joe, he won't give probably 50-50. He'll wait for that 60-40, 70-30 ball. And I think Limerick are very lucky to have a fella like Nickey that will get on the ball more than anybody else over the course of the game. Even though they might be from restarts, that he's the man. And we saw with the contact lens that was or wasn't, that if Limerick need to slow things down, Nickey is the man to steer the ship.
Yeah, you're not expecting me to comment on that now, are you, Jack?
I
didn't see Nickey Quaid stopping the game at all. But look, there are dark arts in every sport, and if you have to slow down the game, of course it happens, and somebody has to do it. And I've no comment to make on that other than to say tactics are tactics, and you have to use whatever tactics are within the law to win any match. And I've no issue with what Nickey Quaid did.
Yeah, and Joe, when your captain is away, like Declan wasn't on the field, to have someone like Nickey that can just reset things for you is so crucial and will be vital on our final day.
No comment on that matter. Other than to say that if I had taken the same approach in '94, I might have an All-Ireland medal in my pocket.
I would.
Look, a lot was made of it. Yes, it slowed down the game a bit. I think the next two puck outs, Galway hit two wides. So it wasn't a case of, right, slow down the game, next minute Limerick went on a rampage. Galway hit two poor wides after it. Look, it's like everything else. If it worked, what was he doing? And believe me, I've been the butt of it for the last 30 odd years of the so-called quick puck out to Joe Hegarty. And I don't know, did I mention it last time we were on here? I said we were market leaders in that. A quick puck out from Quaid to Hegarty. Going back 30 years ago, that's what it's all about these days. Back then we were two villains. But yeah, we were just showing the way forward.
Yeah, exactly. And on Gearóid Hegarty there, Matt, he's been a really big game player. You're still laughing about the 90s final, but Gearóid Hegarty, last year won 5. The previous year he got 2-2.
I'm laughing at Joe Quaid, the way he put that. That's what I'm laughing at.
I know, but on Gearóid Hegarty and players.
Sorry, Jack, I missed your question.
You're grand. Limerick have got a lot from their big game players in All-Ireland finals. Obviously, Keane in 21, Gearóid in every final. Even Tom got 5 points against Waterford. Can you envisage another big performance from one individual to nearly drag Limerick over the line again?
Yeah, but don't ask me which one, because a different one seems to come out of the woodwork all the time. But speaking of Gearóid Hegarty, like he just relishes the big day. He relishes Croke Park. And I suppose it's fair to say about Gearóid that in the early part of the season, that in the early part of the championship even, that he was below his best. But from the Munster final, from the Cork game on, Cork Munster final, semi-final, he has really driven us, has really captured the type of form that we expect from Gearóid Hegarty. And we've seen him in Croke Park. Has he got man of the match twice in Croke Park in All-Ireland finals? That will give you an idea of the type of big game player that he is. He's a hugely influential player for Limerick, and Nickey mentioned it there earlier on about who will pick him up, and I think that is hugely important, just as it is important as to who will pick up Tom Morrissey. And the Kilkenny half-back line, I just put it to Nicky, are they a small bit vulnerable?
Well, at this stage, we don't know who's going to play there. David Blanchfield looks like he's out. And I posed the question of would they put back Paddy Deegan on Ger Hegarty 2 years in a row when he had an uncomfortable game there last year. So Richie Reid is a player who has generally enjoyed playing in a pocket area there because opponents tend to go with 7, as Clare did the last day. And it's only when they went man on man that they got some return for that. Now, I know Kilkenny came good in the end again. So I'd say of all the lines on the Kilkenny team, probably the half-back line is the one that's going to require the most consideration as to how they're going to be able to cope with what Limerick has to offer there. So, yeah, there will be some big calls have to be made by Kilkenny as to how they will shape that half-back line. I forget about the team that's actually picked or where they might be positioned. But I think there could be a possibility. They just might throw Darragh Corcoran or Pádraig Walsh at left half back and maybe Paddy Deegan at right on Tom Morrissey and see how that goes. That just may be the way they'll actually line up when the ball is thrown in on Sunday.
Paddy Deegan has been in a couple of different positions, cornerback, wing back. I think he's played midfield at different occasions as well. Like, he is a very versatile player, and he seems to be more comfortable on the left than the right, though, Nicky.
Yeah, no, I accept that, and that's a valid point, and it might be one reason why he might be picked there. But he has been playing last year. He played a lot with his club in the forwards and at midfield. He has a tremendous work rate, great energy. So he's a player that I've no problem with him being on the team. But it's how he would mentally face Ger Hegarty again. On the other hand, if you're a guy that's after getting a difficult time from an opponent last year, by geez, you'd be fairly determined starting off this year that it's not going to be the same result. So sometimes throwing the gauntlet down to one of your players and say, listen, it didn't work for you last year. Now you have an opportunity to atone and get on top of this guy. So look, it can often be the right decision to leave things as they are and let the player take responsibility. Because ultimately, at the end of the day in All-Ireland finals, players have ultimately to take responsibility. The coaches will have done anything they can do with them at the final chat inside in the dressing room before they head out into the Croke Park pitch at 3 o'clock or thereabouts. It's then down to the individual players to start taking responsibility themselves. And I'm sure it's no different between Derek Ling or John Kiley in that regard. Especially now that the Mayor Forna is not allowed in on the field and that. So getting instructions in can be an awful lot different. So you need key players in leadership positions around the field to be able to take messages or to give their own instructions during the course of the game, because that probably is necessary now, unless of course either of the two counties do what Dublin are doing and they have made Pat Gilroy the water carrier, even though he's probably the key coach to Desi Farrell at the moment. So he's the water carrier. So when lads get water, they get some serious instructions as well. So maybe Kilkenny and Limerick can do something like that on Sunday as well.
Tactics.
Oh yeah, that's what it's about, Matt. It's often about tactics. Can win those games at the end of the day. You can be sure of it.
Well, absolutely. I have no problem with it when it is within the law. You know, you were mentioning Joe Quaid there around, like, and again, no comment as such. But you know, you have to do what you've got to do. It's as simple as that. It's all about winning on the day. There's no point in having regrets in the following week or anything like that. Nicky and Joe, obviously, you've both as players experienced the lead up to an All-Ireland final, and the fortnight before it or the 3 weeks before it, probably year time. It's a special time for players, but it's a very, very difficult time as well. Is it a time that you can really enjoy now? I know the lead up, and we got a snapshot of it last Monday evening, Nicky, when you were down. As to what the lead in for Limerick is now. They were very economical with what they said about that would say the fortnight leading into the All-Ireland final. But it's something that has changed. But is it something that you can really enjoy?
Well, I think the way the structure of the championship is now, with games in such every week, in some cases every second week, it's very difficult. I mean, the players are almost in a bubble now from the time they start the championship. The league is to iron out any of the difficulties that might be there and that. And you know, Kilkenny, I think, would have found the league useful from that point of view, if not the final result. And John Kiley clearly used the league to give experience to some of the fringe players, and I think he's getting the benefit of that now. by being able to bring those guys on as subs in the championship, and they have that bit more experience, and they have his confidence and the selector's confidence as well. But it's now all happening so quickly. I mean, there is no time. I mean, yes, we were down in Limerick last Monday week, but Matt, look, that was it was a nuisance really to John Kiley and his players, and it wasn't much different in Kilkenny 2 days later. They just go through the process of meeting people from the media, giving a couple of interviews, and it's something that has to be done. And bear in mind, there was no media interviews at all before the semi-finals. Now, that's another problem for another day, and not for this podcast. But it's the players. Do they get a chance to enjoy it? Not really, because there's no lead up to it at all. I mean, once they were finished in the weekend before last, they had to have get the bodies right and get back. What did they get? Probably 2 decent training sessions and 2 further sessions on top of that. That's probably the amount of work they got, and you're not going to get an awful lot done there. If there was a third week, maybe you could sharpen things up a little bit. But no, everything is happening so quickly now, and the new condensed season means that it's the main thing is, can we avoid having injuries? Now it looks like both counties will be down a player because of injury going into the final, and I'm not even referring to Sean Finn and Declan Hannon. So that's just the way it is. I mean, you just can't get time to recover now. I'm uncomfortable with it that they've crammed it so tightly, but look, it just seems to be the way it's going to be now. But so is the enjoyment there? I can only speak about Kilkenny here. I mean, there's few flags around the place, but generally speaking, there's a bit more maybe in the media leading up this week, all right. But generally speaking, it doesn't have the same hype as years ago at all. And I think the biggest factor for me is when the kids were back in school in September in the county, you were always able to create a great atmosphere in the first week or two of primary and secondary school. I mean, schools they won't be back now for still a number of weeks, so it is much more difficult to create that atmosphere. You have the cool camps on at the moment around the Kilkenny and Limerick and other places, of course. You can't get players to go to the cool camps to meet the kids and to give them the experience of meeting players for very obvious reasons. They're preparing for big championship games. So there are some downsides to all of this being crammed together, and I'm uncomfortable a bit with it. I think it needs to be extended a little bit, but that's a discussion for another occasion.
Yeah, there's
just on that point that Nickey made, Joe. What are your thoughts on the season?
Yeah, look, there's something that's been in my head that I'd love to find out since the Clare match, really. And it's, did John Kiley and Paul Kinnaird take a conscious decision to train through the round robin in Munster? Because there was just little certain parts of games there where Cathal O'Neill being an example against Clare, he looked so heavy-legged against Clare. He looked like a man that was after doing 2 solid weeks training, and he comes out then three weeks later and gives an outstanding performance. Like, did the boys consciously turn around, I suppose, and say, right, lads, we'll take a chance so that we'll be ready for Croke Park when we get there? No, it's very presumptuous. It's a ballsy move if they did, and they were within a puck of a ball of going out of Munster. So maybe as Nickey said there, like, there's definitely no work being done the last 2 weeks. I can guarantee you one thing. That's just pure and solid recovery. They'd have 4 or 5 sessions, maybe one of them would be of any benefit that they go hammer and tongs, maybe 1.5 sessions. But maybe the work has to be put in early in the season now because it's so condensed, because once you get into the round robin, if you go through the back door, as they say, and you're into a final, you actually have no time to go through it. As far as enjoying it, you're probably with the shorter space of time as a player, you're being less pulled and dragged to things. Will they enjoy it? Look, come here. Any of the 4 of us would love to be talking out next Sunday, so they'll enjoy it.
Yeah, it's one for, I suppose, a different day is the split season, and we will get into it eventually. But I suppose when you win an All-Ireland final, we just a few more things on the game. Joe, like, obviously, Declan Hannon didn't make the semi-final, and that call was made 3 weeks before the game, which would lend me to believe that probably wasn't going to make the final as well. But if Declan was, would say, 70%, would you go with him or would you leave him in reserve? Joe?
That's a toss of a coin now. Are All Ireland finals a place for 70% players? And would anyone else on the squad be happy if someone went in at 70%, considering that the talent that's there and the work rate that's required? No, if he could go in at 100% for 70% of the game, there's a different scenario. Yes, I would start him. But if he was only 70% fit, I wouldn't think so. No, you have two other scenarios, Jack, as well. One is they called it very early that he'd be out for the semi-final. If he was out for the final, would they have called it as well? Who knows? But look, it's given. I guarantee you, it's given Derek Lyng a headache because he doesn't know if his centre forward is going to be marked probably up closer by Will O'Donoghue, or whether his centre forward is going to be picked up by one of the Limerick midfielders because Declan will be sitting back. So I suppose, why would you be telling them all cute Kilkenny cats anything coming up? Because I can guarantee you one thing, in their head, and even still, no, you wouldn't hear a whole pile back out of them.
Yeah, 100%. Nickey,
I have a car, Jack, ordered from Dave Buggy down in Kilkenny, and I was supposed to be picking it up the 1st of July. I still haven't got a phone call. So I don't know, is he playing tactics as well? He's waiting. So he thinks Kilkenny will win, that he'll have a cut off me when I go down for it.
Yeah,
I know him fairly well, Joe. I get my cars off him as well, so I'll have a word with him later for you to say that you called him out publicly on the airwaves.
Exactly. I'd say he's holding on to Nickey to have a cut off me next week if Kilkenny win.
Yeah, we'll get your car sorted anyhow. We'll get Sunday sorted first, John. We'll get the car then. But Nickey is
tactics, Joe.
It's a strange thing to say, but will Kilkenny be targeting that centre back area regardless of who's there? You know, if it's Declan, he won't have had that match experience semi-final. If it's Will, he doesn't have much inter-county experience. He's plenty with the Piercing. But could you see Kilkenny maybe putting a shooter there, like Tipperary have done with Jason Ford, telling him to drop off whoever the centre back is and try and score from deep?
I'm not sure they'll tactically target whoever is in that position. I think, in fairness, Kilkenny will. I think when it comes to things like that, I think it is how they're going to play as a unit in the forwards. I mean, clearly, any of the Kilkenny forwards, to be honest about it, if they're given space, as Joe's alluded to there with Declan Hanlon, where he sits back in the pocket and gives a bit of space, any of the Kilkenny forwards are capable of popping over points. It doesn't matter which of them it is. They're all good enough at that, and they've shown that in the past. So, look, games take on a trend. I think, Jack, the issue here is that, look, the game will start off probably at a frenetic pace on Sunday, and the teams will get a couple of scores, or somebody will get a goal or two, and it could put one side on the back foot, and suddenly the game takes on maybe a different persona. So you just don't know. That's what the job of the selectors will be on both sides, to have in the back of their mind, if certain strategies develop during the course of the game that's impacting their team, that they have to kind of change plans, and whatever would that be. They will have gone through all of this scenario well over the last number of months as they faced into the championship, to be honest about it. But I don't think Kilkenny will deliberately target any particular player, to be honest about it. Because I think all of the Limerick players in their own individual way are simply very, very good players. That I think, you target one guy and take your eye off another guy, and you're just going to be snookered. So I think you have to have a tactic for the whole team, and you have to have a tactic for the strategy that Limerick will deploy. For example, Darragh O'Donovan heading off out on the wing to pick up the ball coming out of defence, and his defenders know exactly where he's going to be. Now there's a tactic for Kilkenny there to not give him that amount of space to be getting that ball, and that goes back to what we said earlier. Kilkenny defenders and midfielders, Kilkenny attackers and midfielders becoming defenders when they have to be, and doing that a lot more.
Yeah, it's an interesting point. Another thing is Kilkenny, I suppose it's more under Brian Cody, having known to spring a few surprises on Iron Final Day. Obviously, Walter Walsh, Kieran Joyce led the replay, Blanchfield came in one year. Can you see something different under Derek Lyng for the final?
Well, the only difference might be that one of the older players might very well start. Maybe he will start Walter Walsh, maybe ahead of someone like Tom Phelan. I don't know. I doubt it myself, because I think he sees the real benefit of those players as being when they come on and be introduced. When they be introduced in the game will depend on the way the game will flow. You just don't know that. But I'm more of the opinion that he will stick to the team that played the last day. But obviously with Blanchfield likely out now, there's some thinking to be done about the half back line as well. So bar that, I still think the team will probably stay the same. And he has those players. And Cian Kenny, who's been coming on as well, played last year's final. He'd be a much smaller player, but he's a good player to kind of move around in the space and pick up the ball and both engineer a score and bring the play. And so he's been very effective as a sub coming on and making perhaps a better contribution as a sub than a starting player, to be honest about it.
Yeah, and Joe, then for Limerick, I think Colin O'Neill was the big one. He came on the last day. He started a couple of games, hasn't started an All-Ireland final. Declan, we're not going to know, but do you think Limerick will go with the team that started against Galway?
Look, on their previous pickings of teams, like Cathal O'Neill, what day was it? He went out and scored 5 points. He didn't stop the next game. Do you know what I mean? Like, obviously, these guys, John and the lads, are picking teams on how training is going, who's in form. So it'll all depend. They'll surely got, as I said, probably one good training session, good internal match this week. And the team will look on that. Like, if Declan does that, who loses out? Do you know? Does David really drop off the team? Do you know? And to be fair to him, he's after breaking into the team and he's been outstanding. Do you know, Cathal O'Neill has to be at this stage feeling a bit left out that he's not starting. Do you know? The one worry I would have is that, and I'd only heard yesterday that Richie was after doing his cruciate. I think we might be a bit thin in the ground for full back cover, and that's one worry I would have. But look, we'll probably just Kiley. He'll probably just pick Peter Casey to go back on the back as he does with forwards.
Yeah, fair enough. We'll finish up soon, lads. But Nicky, just 2 more things on Kilkenny. First of all, 8 years without an All-Ireland coming into this year. Very strange 3, and to lose 3 finals in a row, you know, is it starting to get kind of anxious up there that you need to get your hands on Liam McCarthy?
I think there's probably 2 strands on that, Jack. One is that I suppose the fact that it's Derek Kling's first year, that he's been, they've seen things going very well, and while they want Kilkenny to win the final, I think he'd be cut a bit of slack on that one. That's on one side. On the other side, to have lost the last 4 All-Ireland you played in is a record that Kilkenny wouldn't want to have. I mean, and simultaneously, Limerick will win 4 All-Irelands in a row, which matches Kilkenny and Cork. And their win this year, and I think they would be equally well equipped to win again next year. And they would have probably, they're up there with the great Kilkenny team of Brian Cody's era. And in many respects, you could say they've surpassed it because the competitions have been maybe more intense during the Limerick period as well. But look, that's like comparing 2 great boxers. We let the guys over a pint in somewhere else, a pub, have a chat about that someday, let them sort it out. But I do think that from a Kilkenny point of view, I think the fact that we won the under-20 last year came as a big sigh of relief because we had been really struggling with 20s and minors for quite some time. A little bit lucky maybe last year in the 20s because we have to be frank about it. Galway were down 2 key players, Wexford 1 player, and Limerick 2 players in the All-Ireland final. So we were down nobody. So we got a bit of a lucky break last year in the 20s, to be fair, but we were improving with every game, to be fair. And maybe the 20s game is an interesting one in when comparing with Sunday. I mean, Kilkenny went into that game against Limerick, albeit Limerick without Cathal O'Neill, still feeling probably they were the underdogs, and they really improved in the game. I know there was an issue of a controversial point and all of that, but it showed you that Kilkenny team, despite how strong Limerick were, even without Cathal O'Neill, we're still seen as capable of winning that, and the Kilkenny young lads stood up to them and won that game. That's the sort of character that Kilkenny bring to an All-Ireland final, and hopefully they'll be able to bring the same character on Sunday. But yes, the years are creeping up, and people will start getting a little bit edgy. But so far, maybe they might have. But those comments might be made next Monday or Tuesday. But for now, we just put our best foot forward and hope that we will get number 37.
Yeah, Joe, Nicky alluded there briefly about the Kilkenny team of the noughties, and Limerick are trying to emulate that feat of 4 in a row. Is that something that you ever consider that Limerick could be capable of? Obviously, you got so close twice, and when there was the breakthrough in 18, it was brilliant. But to now be on the cusp of 4 in a row, it's something it's hard to fathom, really.
It is, look, to be fair, only for a puck of a ball and a dodgy line ball decision, we could possibly be looking at, we'd be going for 5 in a row this year. But the one thing, and I'll go back to it, is our memories are still very raw of the Bern years. It's only 6 years ago that we came out in Nolan Park with a moral victory, a decent performance against Kilkenny, and we said, look, there was shoots there, but never did we think that what is after happening. My youngest daughter, Sophie, was graduated from Doon School this year, and Father Chris O'Donnell was doing the mass, and he was talking to him, obviously, that 6 years spent in school. He said, you're very privileged. He said, you're very unusual group to go through school. He said, you've gone through COVID, and he said, you've also seen Limerick win 4 All-Irelands during your 6 years in school. No, it went down well with about half of the crowd, because half of the crowd going to school and doing their tip. So, but like, when you think of that, from the time my youngest daughter started secondary school to now, we 4 All-Irelands won. If somebody told me the day she walked in the gate at Doon School, I would have gone, lads, you're off your head. There is no way. At the time, I thought I'd be lucky to see one in my lifetime. So we're thankful, but we still remember the Bern days.
Oh, yeah, definitely. A shout out to Chris there, a good pal of mine. Matt, we'll get into the nitty gritty, the predictions here, and I think it's fair to assume that you think Limerick are going to win, but by how much and why?
Yeah, I think it's going to be extremely close. It was extremely close last year. 2 points in the finish. I know Kilkenny hit 3 late points. I think Kilkenny are a much better equipped side this year. We haven't seen Limerick really at their full throttle, full best for 70 minutes yet, but I'd be pretty confident. They have this ability, and if you look through it, and if you look through their record in Munster, beat Waterford by 2 points, lost to Clare by 1, drew with Tipperary, beat Cork by a point, beat Clare by a point. Now, all right, they beat Galway by 9 points, but that was a turnaround of 15 because they were 6 down. It strikes me that they may be hitting their peak form at the right time, and I believe they will have to. And I think I'm leaning towards Limerick to win by about 2 points, Jack.
Nickey, you'll be going the opposite direction, would you?
Well, yeah, no, I'm realistic about it here. I mean, Limerick are coming in and they have the better form. I think Kilkenny have been a little bit inconsistent. But I would go on the fact that historically Kilkenny are a very hard team to beat. They generally often play their best hurling in a final, and they showed that last year. I mean, they came in, I thought, might be more underdogs last year, and got very close to Limerick at the end. Limerick deserved to win the game, to be fair. So I'm not giving Kilkenny have a big chance. There's no question about that. I think they're capable of winning this game, and they could do it, absolutely. But on form, you'd have to say Limerick deserve to be favourites. And it can often be a bounce of a ball or a decision by the referee or something like that that can influence the game. We saw back the last time when the famous ball that hit up Killian Buckley's hurling, Limerick will say if they had to get to 65 for that, it could have changed the game as well. That's a fair point. But that's why decisions like that can influence a game, and that's why it could be so tight. I don't think you're going to see a game as easily won by Limerick as they did in the semi-final or in the league final. I think that Kilkenny will be well up for that, but they will need all their players playing at full tilt, and that hasn't been happening yet, and that's why I'd be a little bit worried. You'd just be hoping that because it's a final, Kilkenny have that just innate ability to just rise on a final and take on whoever's in front of them. It doesn't matter, and if they do that, they're more than capable of winning on Sunday. But I expect Limerick will still be the favourites to win this game.
Joe, 4 in a row, or can Kilkenny end the wait?
Look, I definitely call 4 in a row. If I said anything else, people would say you're being cute and this and that and deflecting away. But, and there's a serious but with that, and I'd be a man for reading body language and stuff. And on Cody's interview after the semi-final, I'd say he would have gone in, put on a new pair of tog socks and boots, and came out and played the All-Ireland final straight after that. You could see the veins coming out the side of his neck. He was so happy that they were after getting over the line, and they want to go to an All-Ireland, and they're winners. Like, you think, okay, Kilkenny haven't won in a while, but Ballyhale have. These guys, they're winners. They're born winners. It doesn't matter how long it's been since they won. Nothing will second place to anyone at that Kilkenny team. No. So it's going to be an unbelievable battle. And what I'm really looking forward to is all the shite this year of pulling, dragging, tactics of stopping lads holding. I don't think that's going to happen. I think it happened last year in the final. The two teams just went at each other. If you want to be physical, we'll be physical. If you want to huddle, we'll huddle. If you want to run the ball, we'll run. You know, it's going to be, I hope, a game for the ages in that there's no cynicism. There's none of that pulling, dragging. And I think, to be fair, John Keenan, if he's left referee it in the style that he likes to referee it, I don't think the game should be decided by too many refereeing decisions either. He'll just let him out, because the two teams are actually looking forward, I would think, to going, look, you're trained to huddle. You're trained to play games. That's what it's boiled down to. You don't train to be pulling and dragging. What we want is a game of hurling there on Sunday night. I actually can't wait for it. Unfortunately, I can't make it up because I got my hip replaced 4 weeks ago, but I will be watching it on the telly. So
you probably damaged the hip jumping up if Growth Hegarty starts like he did 12 months ago. And on John
off my hip.
And on John Keenan, I think it's his final game, so you'll be hopeful he'll just swallow the whistle and whatever repercussions he won't have to deal with. But Matt, I'll give you the final word there because you're agent to get in.
Yeah, I won't delay a second. Just a couple of things. First of all, Joe, I didn't know about your hip replacement. Wish you the best of luck for a very, very speedy. You'll bounce back higher. Anyway, but just that it's Nicky's first appearance on with us here, and you know, it would be about your illustrious career, Nickey, both on and as president of the association. Am I right in saying you're 5 Ireland medals?
I'm 5 All-Ireland medals, yeah.
Put modesty aside for just 30 seconds. Am I right in saying you were president from 2007 to 2009?
No, 2006 to 2009.
2006. And during that time, did you get to present the Liam McCarthy Cup to anybody but a Kilkenny captain?
No, I didn't. And a little story there, actually. I was giving an oration at the funeral of the late Con Murphy of Cork. And during Con Murphy's presidency, he presented the All-Ireland trophy to Cork on 3 occasions. And it was a celebration of Con's life, to be honest about it. Sad to see a man die, but he had a great life. And I jokingly said at the graveside, I said, well, now, if things ran right for me, I'd hope to do the same thing as Con Murphy. And they actually ended up doing that as well. Now, as it happens, my wife was from Kerry. I couldn't quite repeat the treat for Kerry, but I presented to him twice. But Tyrone got in on the act on 1 occasion. So, yeah, that's it. Yeah. And I suppose I have another lovely memory as well, perhaps the best of them all. I'm the only president to ever present an All-Ireland club trophy to his own club.
Yeah, that's
very
lovely.
good. Very good.
That's a brilliant story there. It was a brilliant presidency, and thank you very much for your time today, first and foremost, Nickey, and all that you did for the GAA. Your time, we were playing days, obviously, against Limerick at the very starting your first year. You beat Limerick in the final, so we won't thank you for that. But everything there on up until now has been really appreciated, and
and my last game as a manager with Kilkenny was against Limerick in the National Hurling League match in Nolan Park in
97.
In 97. I played on a Sunday evening. I don't want to recall that occasion, but I did want to acknowledge that it was Limerick. Was when that was the day I called a halt. I had enough of it at that stage, but Shin Scale Ella, we'll talk about that some other time.
Yeah, you finished him up there, Joe. Nickey, thank you very much for your time.
Okay.
Joe as well, thank you so much for joining us this morning. Matt, as always, I certainly can't wait for the final. I'm sure you're the same. Thank you for everyone that watching. Noah's Menzer for getting involved in sponsoring. Please God, it's Limerick making it 4 in a row, but one thing's for sure, it'll be a great game. So thank you, lads. We'll talk again soon.
Cheers.
All the best.
Impression of the game you get all with what you put into. It's like a walk of life. If you're good enough, go out and get it, no more about it.
But not so much control in the centre of the field from Kilkenny as Richie Bennett sends it high and over the bar.
Your mother sends you down to the shop for a pound's worth of goods and she gives you 50 pence. You can't get the pound's worth of goods, can you?
Just about kept in. Oh, well done, Johnny Buckley. To do that to Tommaso Sheahy, he deserves to score from here. One of the highlights of the Sunday game.
Limerick went out there from the word court today. No more about it. They made all the running, that was it. Put the ball over the bar and the back of it, and that's it. No ifs, no buts.
Is there